There is a particular kind of elder you may have met in your life. They do not speak the loudest in the room, but when they speak, people lean in. They carry their years not as a burden but as something earned, something worn gently. You feel safer around them, calmer, more yourself. This is not because they have lived perfectly. It is because they have learned to let go of what no longer serves them. Buddhism teaches that growing older is not about accumulating wisdom through time alone. Time does not make you wise. Reflection does. Letting go does. The willingness to soften where you once hardened, to release where you once clung, to admit where you once insisted. Some people age and become lighter, freer, more peaceful. Others age and become heavier, more bitter, harder to be around. The difference is not in what life gave them, it is in what they chose to release along the way. Today, you will learn about 9 things that people who are deeply respected in old age never do anymore. These are not rules to follow, they are invitations, gentle reminders of what it means to age with dignity. If you are approaching your elder years, or if you simply wish to understand what makes certain people carry their age with such grace, listen gently. Let these words meet you where you are, and know that it is never too late to begin letting go. 1. They never pretend to know everything. When you are young, you speak to prove yourself. You fill silences with opinions. You defend ideas as though they are extensions of your identity. You fear that admitting "I don't know" will make you appear weak, unprepared, less than. So you speak, even when silence would serve better. You answer, even when uncertainty is more honest. But something shifts as you grow older, if you allow it. The need to perform knowledge begins to fade. You start to understand that true authority does not come from having all the answers. It comes from being honest about what you do not know. In Buddhism, this is called humility. Not the false humility that pretends to be small, but the real humility that recognizes the vastness of what you have yet to learn. The Buddha himself said, "The fool who knows he is a fool is that much wiser. The fool who thinks he is wise is called a fool indeed." This teaching points to something essential. Wisdom begins the moment you stop pretending. People who are deeply respected in old age have released the exhausting performance of knowing everything. They no longer feel threatened by questions they cannot answer. They no longer need to fill every pause with certainty. Instead, they have learned to say, "I don't know," without shame. And in doing so, they create space for real learning, real curiosity, real conversation. When you stop pretending to know everything, something beautiful happens. People begin to trust you more, not less. Because they sense you are not performing, you are not hiding, you are simply being honest. And honesty, even in uncertainty, carries more weight than false confidence ever could. This does not mean you stop sharing what you have learned. It means you share it without needing to be right, without needing to dominate. You offer your perspective as one voice among many, not as the final word. You speak when you have something worth saying, and you remain silent when silence serves better. There is a Zen story about a university professor who visits a master to learn about Zen. The master serves tea. He pours the visitor's cup full, then keeps pouring. The tea overflows, spilling onto the table, onto the floor. The professor watches in alarm and finally says, "It is over full. No more will go in." The master stops pouring and says, "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" This story is not just about Zen, it is about life. If you enter every conversation already full, already certain, already convinced of what you know, there is no room for anything new to enter. You become rigid, closed, and people feel it. They stop bringing their questions to you. They stop seeking your counsel. Not because you lack knowledge, but because you lack space. People who age with dignity understand this deeply. They keep their cups empty enough to receive. They ask more questions than they answer. They listen more than they speak. And when they do speak, their words carry weight precisely because they are not trying to prove anything. They are simply offering what they have learned, gently, without attachment to whether you accept it or not. 2. They never cling to outdated beliefs. The world changes. This is the most fundamental teaching of Buddhism: impermanence. Nothing stays the same. Not your body, not your relationships, not the world around you, not even your beliefs. Everything that exists is in a constant state of becoming something else. Yet many people resist this truth with all their strength. They cling to the past as though it were a solid ground. They repeat phrases like, "In my time, things were better." They close themselves off from new perspectives, new technologies, new ways of being. They harden around what they once knew and refuse to bend, even when bending would bring more peace, more connection, more understanding. This is not wisdom. This is fear disguised as tradition. This is the ego protecting itself against the discomfort of change. People who are deeply respected in old age do not fall into this trap. They understand that clinging to outdated beliefs does not preserve wisdom. It freezes it. It turns living knowledge into dead monuments. They recognize that what served them at 30 may not serve them at 60. What was true in one context may not be true in another, and they are humble enough to remain students of life, even in their elder years. This does not mean abandoning your values. It means holding them lightly enough that they can breathe. It means staying curious instead of certain. It means being willing to say, "I used to believe this, but now I am not so sure." It means listening to younger generations not with judgment but with genuine interest, because wisdom does not belong to any single generation. It emerges through dialogue, through exchange, through the willingness to see through more than one set of eyes. Research from the field of gerontology shows that cognitive flexibility, the ability to adapt thinking in response to changing circumstances, is one of the strongest predictors of successful aging. Older adults who remain mentally flexible report higher life satisfaction, better emotional regulation, and stronger social connections. Those who become rigid in their thinking often experience increased isolation, conflict with loved ones, and a sense of being left behind by a world that no longer makes sense to them. The Buddha taught non-attachment to views. He called it one of the highest forms of letting go, because views, like everything else, are impermanent. They arise based on conditions. They are shaped by your experiences, your culture, your time in history. And when those conditions change, your views must be allowed to change as well. Otherwise, you are carrying around beliefs that no longer fit the shape of your life. Imagine wearing the same shoes you wore as a child. They would not fit. They would cause pain. You would walk awkwardly, unable to move freely. This is what happens when you refuse to update your beliefs. You squeeze yourself into ideas that no longer serve you. You limp through conversations, unable to connect authentically because you are defending positions you no longer even truly hold. Respected elders do not do this. They allow their understanding to evolve. They remain open. They admit when they were wrong. They change their minds when new evidence appears. They approach difference with curiosity rather than defensiveness. And because of this openness, people feel safe around them. People feel heard. People feel respected. And that respect flows back, naturally, without effort. 3. They never gossip or tear others down. Words carry weight. In Buddhism, right speech is one of the core ethical practices. It asks you to speak truthfully, kindly, and only when your words are helpful. This sounds simple, but how often do we actually live this way? Gossip is one of the most common forms of wrong speech. It offers a temporary sense of connection, a quick hit of shared judgment, a moment of feeling better about yourself by diminishing someone else. But that feeling never lasts. What remains is a residue of distrust. Because if you speak poorly about others when they are not present, people begin to wonder what you say about them when they are not present. People who are deeply respected in old age have given up this habit entirely. They understand that tearing others down does not build them up. It erodes their own dignity. It weakens the fabric of trust in their relationships. It poisons the well they drink from. This does not mean they avoid all difficult conversations. It does not mean they smile and nod when something is wrong. It means they speak directly, with compassion, to the person involved, not about them behind their backs. They address issues face to face. They offer feedback with care, and when they disagree, they do so without making the other person wrong. They simply offer a different perspective, holding space for both truths to exist at once. There is an old Buddhist teaching that before you speak, you should ask yourself 3 questions. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? If your words cannot pass through all 3 gates, perhaps they should remain unspoken. This practice transforms how you move through the world. You become someone people can trust, someone who does not traffic in rumor or judgment, someone who speaks with integrity. And integrity, more than anything else, is what creates lasting respect. Studies in social psychology have shown that people who engage in frequent gossip are perceived as less trustworthy, even by those who participate in the gossip with them. There is an unconscious recognition that if someone speaks poorly about others, they will likely speak poorly about you as well. On the other hand, individuals who consistently demonstrate discretion and speak positively about others, even in their absence, are rated as more likable, more trustworthy, and more socially influential. In old age, when your physical strength may fade and your social circle may shrink, your reputation becomes one of your most valuable assets. People who have spent decades speaking with integrity find that their elder years are filled with genuine connection. People seek them out. People confide in them. People trust them with sensitive matters, because they have earned that trust through years of careful, thoughtful speech. Those who have spent decades gossiping, complaining, and tearing others down often find their elder years lonely. People avoid them. Conversations feel shallow. Trust is thin, because they never built the foundation of respect that comes from treating others with dignity, even when those others are not in the room. 4. They never stop learning. There is a sentence that marks the beginning of spiritual death. I am too old to learn. The moment those words leave your mouth, or even just settle in your mind, something inside you begins to close. Your curiosity dims. Your engagement with life weakens. You begin to shrink rather than expand. Buddhism speaks of beginner's mind, a state of openness, of eagerness, of seeing the world with fresh eyes even when you have seen it 1,000 times before. The Zen teacher Shunryu Suzuki wrote, "In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. This is the difference between someone who ages into wisdom and someone who ages into rigidity. Respected elders remain students. They ask questions, they listen to podcasts, they read books, they take classes, they learn new technologies, even if slowly. They explore ideas they do not yet understand. They remain engaged with the world, not because they need to prove anything, but because curiosity is what keeps the spirit alive. This learning does not have to be formal. It does not require enrolling in university courses or mastering complex subjects. It can be as simple as asking your grandchild to teach you how to use a new app, as gentle as reading a novel in a genre you have never explored, as quiet as observing the natural world with attention, noticing patterns you have never noticed before. What matters is the posture, the willingness, the openness. When you remain a learner, you remain connected to life. You remain relevant not because you are trying to keep up, but because you are genuinely interested in what is unfolding around you. Neuroscience supports this beautifully. Research on neuroplasticity shows that the brain remains capable of forming new neural connections throughout life. Older adults who engage in regular learning activities, whether that is learning a language, playing a musical instrument, or mastering a new skill, show improved cognitive function, better memory, and slower rates of cognitive decline. Learning literally keeps the brain young. But beyond the cognitive benefits, there is something deeper. When you continue learning, you remain humble. You remember what it feels like to not know. You remember the vulnerability of being a beginner, and this keeps you empathetic. It keeps you patient with others who are still learning. It prevents you from becoming the kind of elder who dismisses younger people for their lack of experience, because you remember that you, too, are still gathering experience. There is also joy in learning. Pure, simple joy. The delight of discovering something new. The satisfaction of understanding something that once confused you. The pleasure of expanding your world rather than letting it contract. People who stop learning often become bored, restless, dissatisfied. They complain that life has lost its sparkle. But life has not changed. Their engagement with it has. Respected elders do not let this happen. They protect their curiosity like a sacred flame. They nurture it. They feed it. They follow it into unexpected places. And because of this, they remain vibrant, alive, interesting. People enjoy being around them because they are still growing, still evolving, still becoming. 5. They never abandon inner growth. Age does not automatically bring wisdom. Time alone does not transform you. You can live for 70 years and repeat the same patterns over and over, learning nothing, changing nothing, carrying the same resentments, the same fears, the same narrow ways of seeing the world. Wisdom comes from reflection, from noticing your patterns, from examining your reactions, from asking yourself hard questions and being willing to hear uncomfortable answers. It comes from inner work. And inner work does not end when you turn 60 or 70 or 80. If anything, it becomes more important. People who are deeply respected in old age understand this. They continue working on themselves. They notice when they are being reactive. They catch themselves when old habits arise. They soften where they used to harden. They apologize when they harm. They forgive when they hold grudges. They grow not because they have to, but because they choose to. Because growth is what keeps the heart alive. Buddhism calls this the path of awakening, and it is described as a lifelong journey. There is no graduation, no finish line, no moment when you can say, "I am done. I have arrived." There is only the continuous unfolding of awareness, compassion, and understanding. The Diamond Sutra, one of the most important texts in Mahayana Buddhism, contains a teaching that captures this beautifully. It says that even after the Buddha achieved enlightenment, he continued to practice. He continued to meditate. He continued to refine his understanding. Because the path itself is the destination. The practice itself is the point. When you abandon inner growth, something inside you begins to calcify. You become defensive, rigid, unable to admit fault, unable to change course. You blame others for your difficulties. You insist that the world is wrong, not you. And slowly, you become difficult to be around. People walk on eggshells. They avoid certain topics. They stop being honest with you because honesty is met with defensiveness. But when you continue growing, you remain soft, approachable, willing to look at yourself honestly. When someone points out that you hurt them, you listen, you consider. You take responsibility. You do not make excuses or justify your behavior. You simply acknowledge the impact you had and commit to doing better. This is humility in action, and it is what earns deep, lasting respect. Research from developmental psychology shows that individuals who engage in what is called generativity in their later years, a focus on contributing to the next generation and continuing personal development, report significantly higher levels of life satisfaction and psychological well-being. Generativity is not about what you have achieved. It is about who you are becoming and how you are using your remaining years to continue growing and contributing. Those who become stagnant, who stop reflecting, who stop challenging themselves to be better, often experience what psychologists call despair, a sense that life has lost its meaning, a feeling of regret over paths not taken, a bitterness about time wasted. This is not inevitable. It is the result of choosing to stop growing. Respected elders avoid this by treating every day as an opportunity for practice. They ask themselves each evening, how did I show up today? Where did I react from old patterns? Where did I respond from wisdom? What did I learn about myself? They do not do this to punish themselves, but to stay awake, to remain conscious, to keep growing. 6. They never hold on to grudges. Resentment is a heavy thing to carry. It does not feel heavy at first. At first, it feels justified, righteous, like armor protecting you from being hurt again. But over time, that armor becomes a prison. It weighs you down. It separates you from connection. It keeps you locked in the past, replaying old wounds, rehearsing old arguments, nursing old pain. Buddhism teaches that holding on to anger is like holding on to a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. People who are deeply respected in old age have learned to put the coal down, not because the people who hurt them deserved forgiveness, not because what happened was okay, but because they deserve peace. They deserve to be free from the past. They deserve to use their remaining years for joy, connection, and presence, not for rehearsing old grievances. Forgiveness, in the Buddhist sense, is not about condoning harmful behavior. It is not about reconciling with people who continue to harm you. It is not about pretending that pain did not happen. It is about releasing the grip that pain has on your heart. It is about choosing your own freedom over the satisfaction of holding on. This is not easy. Some wounds run deep, some betrayals cut to the bone, some losses feel impossible to accept. But holding on to resentment does not undo what happened. It only ensures that the harm continues, now inflicted by your own hand. There is a practice in Buddhism called metta, or loving-kindness meditation. One version of this practice involves directing phrases of goodwill towards someone who has hurt you, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve to be free. You might say silently, "May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be free from suffering." At first, these words may feel impossible, false, bitter in your mouth, but with time, with repetition, something shifts. The heart softens. You realize that their happiness or unhappiness has nothing to do with you anymore. You are no longer bound to them by anger. Studies in psychology confirm what Buddhist teachers have known for centuries. Chronic resentment is linked to increased stress, higher rates of cardiovascular disease, weakened immune function, and greater rates of depression and anxiety. On the other hand, people who practice forgiveness, who actively work to release grudges, show improved physical health, better emotional regulation, and stronger, more satisfying relationships. People who carry resentment into old age often find that it colors everything. They become cynical, suspicious, unable to trust. They replay old hurts in their minds until those hurts become their identity. They define themselves by what was done to them rather than by who they are choosing to become. But people who release resentment, who choose forgiveness, find that their elder years are marked by lightness, peace, freedom. They are no longer prisoners of their past. They are no longer defined by old wounds. They have reclaimed their energy, their joy, their capacity for connection. And people feel this. People are drawn to them. Because they are no longer broadcasting pain, they are broadcasting peace. This does not mean they have forgotten. Memory remains. But memory without resentment is different. It is simply information, a part of your story, not the whole story, not the story that defines you. 7. They never treat people as disposable. There is a teaching in Buddhism that every person you meet carries Buddha nature, the seed of awakening, the potential for complete understanding and compassion. This teaching asks you to see beyond surface appearances, beyond roles, beyond status, beyond what someone can do for you. It asks you to recognize the inherent dignity in every human being. People who are deeply respected in old age live this teaching. They treat everyone with kindness, not just people who can benefit them, not just people who share their status, not just people who look like them or think like them. Everyone. The cashier at the grocery store, the person who cleans their home, the stranger on the bus, the family member who has nothing material to offer. They do this not because they are trying to be good. They do this because they genuinely see the humanity in others. They recognize that every person has a story. Every person is carrying something. Every person deserves to be treated with dignity. This is especially important as you age, because the world often begins to treat older people as disposable. Society values youth, productivity, speed. When you slow down, when your productivity decreases, when you need more care than you can give, the world can make you feel invisible, irrelevant, burdensome. People who have spent their lives treating others as disposable often experience this treatment themselves in old age and feel devastated by it. They wonder where everyone went, why people do not visit, why calls are not returned, but they are experiencing the echo of their own behavior. You cannot spend decades treating people as useful only when they serve your purposes, and then expect to be cherished when you can no longer serve anyone. But people who have spent their lives treating others with consistent dignity find something different. They find that people show up for them, people visit, people call, people remember. because those people were made to feel valuable, seen, important, not for what they could do, but for who they were. Research on social support in aging confirms this. Older adults with strong social networks, characterized by mutual respect and genuine connection, experience better physical health, lower rates of depression, and longer life expectancy. These networks are not built overnight. They are built through decades of showing up for people, treating them with kindness, valuing them beyond their utility. There is a story about a monk who was asked, "How do you practice kindness?" The monk replied, "I try to greet every person as though they are carrying something fragile. This is the posture. This is the awareness. Every person is carrying something, some burden, some joy, some fear, some hope. When you recognize this, you naturally soften. You naturally treat people with more care. Respected elders embody this. They greet people warmly. They remember names. They ask how people are doing and actually listen to the answer. They thank people sincerely. They acknowledge effort. They notice when someone is struggling and offer a kind word. They do not do this to be liked. They do this because it is how they have learned to move through the world, with awareness, with compassion, with respect for the inherent worth of every person. And this respect circles back. When you treat people as valuable, they feel it, they remember it, and they honor you in return, not because you demanded it, not because you manipulated it, but because you earned it quietly over years of consistent, dignified behavior. 8. They never neglect self-care. There is a common misconception that caring for yourself is selfish, that putting your needs first is self-centered, that sacrifice is always noble. But Buddhism teaches something different. The Buddha said, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." This is not about indulgence. This is about responsibility. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot care for others if you are depleted. You cannot show up with presence, patience, and kindness if you are running on fumes, ignoring your own needs, pushing past your limits until you collapse. People who are deeply respected in old age understand this. They care for their bodies. They rest when they are tired. They eat foods that nourish them. They move in ways that feel good. They say no when they need to say no. They protect their energy. They set boundaries. They do not over-explain. They do not overgive. They understand that their well-being is the foundation from which everything else flows. This becomes even more important as you age. Your body becomes more fragile. Your energy is more limited. Recovery takes longer. If you ignore these realities, if you push yourself the way you did at 40, you will burn out. You will become irritable, exhausted, resentful. And instead of being a source of wisdom and calm, you will become a burden to yourself and to others. But when you honor your limits, when you care for yourself with the same tenderness you would offer to a dear friend, you remain vibrant. You remain available. You can show up for the people you love without resentment. You can offer your presence without depletion. Self-care in old age looks different than it does in youth. It is not about spa days or luxury, though those can be part of it. It is about listening to your body, respecting your rhythms, sleeping when you need to sleep, resting without guilt, asking for help when you need help, acknowledging pain without judgment, adapting your life to fit your current capacity rather than forcing your current capacity to fit your old life. Gerontological research shows that older adults who engage in regular self-care practices including adequate sleep, balanced nutrition, gentle exercise, and social connection, experience better outcomes across nearly every health metric. They have lower rates of chronic illness, better cognitive function, improved mood, and greater overall life satisfaction. But perhaps more importantly, they do not become the kind of elder who drains everyone around them. You know this type, the person who refuses to rest, who insists on doing everything themselves, who collapses repeatedly and then requires emergency care, who refuses help until crisis forces it, who martyrs themselves and then resents everyone for not noticing. This is not noble, this is not selfless, this is self-neglect, and it harms everyone, including you. Respected elders do not do this. They care for themselves proactively. They rest before they collapse. They ask for help before crisis hits. They honor their limits without shame. They understand that taking care of themselves is not separate from taking care of others. It is what allows them to take care of others sustainably, joyfully, without resentment. 9. They never lose their sense of wonder. The deepest tragedy of aging is not wrinkles or slower movement or fading memory. It is losing the ability to be moved, to be touched by beauty, to feel awe, to notice the miracle of ordinary life. Children see magic everywhere: a butterfly, a raindrop on glass, the way light moves through leaves. They are astonished by the world because they are still close to wonder. But somewhere along the way, most adults lose this. They become numb, busy, distracted. The world becomes background noise. Beauty becomes something they scroll past without noticing. But people who are deeply respected in old age refuse to let this happen. They protect their capacity for wonder like a sacred flame. They still notice sunsets. They still feel gratitude for a good meal. They still laugh easily. They still feel wonder at the complexity of a flower, the kindness of a stranger, the resilience of the human spirit. Buddhism speaks of returning to beginner's heart. Not beginner's mind, which is about learning, but beginner's heart, which is about feeling, about remaining tender, about staying open to being touched by life. This is not naivety. It is not pretending that suffering does not exist. It is choosing to remain available to beauty even in the midst of difficulty. It is choosing to notice what is still here, still good, still worth celebrating, even as you acknowledge what is hard. There is a difference between someone who has lived many years and someone who has aged with wisdom. The first has accumulated experiences but has grown numb to them. The second has remained awake, still capable of being surprised, still willing to be moved. This quality is magnetic. People want to be around those who still find joy in small things. Those who can point out beauty others have stopped noticing. Those whose eyes still light up. Those who have not become cynical or jaded or resigned. Wonder is a choice. Every day you choose whether to notice or to sleepwalk, whether to pay attention or to move through life on autopilot, whether to let beauty touch you or to armor yourself against feeling. Respected elders choose wonder. They choose presence. They choose to keep their hearts soft. And this softness, this openness, this willingness to still be amazed is perhaps what makes them most beloved, because they remind others that life is still worth savoring, that joy is still available, that even in old age, even with all the losses and challenges, there is still so much to be grateful for. Growing older is inevitable. The body will slow, the hair will gray, the skin will change. This is life unfolding as it must. You cannot stop time. You cannot freeze yourself at your peak. You cannot avoid the natural process of aging. But growing bitter is optional. Growing rigid is optional. Growing isolated, resentful, difficult to be around, these are all choices made slowly over years through the accumulation of what you refuse to release. Growing respected, on the other hand, is also a choice. It is a choice made every single day, a choice to let go of what no longer serves, to remain open, to keep learning, to treat people with dignity, to care for yourself, to notice beauty, to forgive, to soften where you once hardened. Dignity does not come from adding more. It comes from releasing, from putting down the heavy things you have been carrying. The need to be right, the need to know everything, the outdated beliefs, the grudges, the gossip, the neglect of your own well-being, the numbness to wonder. When you put these things down, what remains is essence, the truest part of you, the part that does not need to prove anything, the part that can simply be present, kind, awake. And that is what people respect. Not what you achieved, not what you know, not what you once were, but who you have become through the quiet, steady practice of letting go. If there is one thing to remember from this teaching, let it be this: respect is not demanded, it is not purchased, it is not inherited. It is earned through how you treat yourself and others across the decades of your life. Through your willingness to grow, to change, to remain humble, to stay tender. You can begin this practice at any age. It is never too late to start letting go. It is never too late to soften. It is never too late to become the kind of elder you would want to know. Sit with this, let it settle, and then, gently, begin.